is my view that all of these actions, including the suspension of G8 summit preparations, should remain in effect until such time as President Putin's government leaves all occupied sovereign Ukrainian territory.
Not all the diplomatic steps are been exhausted already, so we still have a chance to resolve all the issue without really fighting.
Some countries just seem almost destined to have tension between them and a flare-up of those tensions from time to time. Is that fair to say about Ukraine and Russia in the most recent history? Dominic Arel is the chair of Ukrainian Studies at the University of Ottawa. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Welcome.
Any surprise to you, say, over the last month as all of this began to develop?
Of course, there's surprise. Well, first of all, the Yanukovych regime collapsed after mass killing 2 weeks ago, and the security forces almost inexplicably just vanished. It was like 2 Fridays ago. And now we have effectively Russian invasion of Crimea. As Mr. Bardin said, these are Russian troops. These are not so-called local self-defense troops. And the resolution that was adopted by the Russian parliament, the higher chambers last Saturday, talks about the right for Russia to send troops on the territory of Ukraine, so not limited to Crimea. And Mr. Putin repeated that this morning. So that is highly surprising to me. I would never have expected that essentially Russia would go almost to war.
Dominique, Marissa Semke here. I want to take you back to 1994, where the Budapest Convention basically ensured Ukraine's territorial integrity in exchange for its nuclear capabilities. What does the West have to do to, again, as I mentioned, maintain its territorial integrity here? As you mentioned, Russian forces already rolling through Crimea and also other key cities in Ukraine.
Well, that's a very tall order, because of course there's no stomach for direct military confrontation with the Russian army. But it's a clear violation of territorial integrity and clear violation of that accord that you mentioned that was signed in '94. And you can also imagine the international repercussions of that violation, because essentially Ukraine agreed 20 years ago to let go of its nuclear arsenal. You know, with the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukraine wound up suddenly as the 3rd nuclear power. And in exchange for, again, recognition of its borders that included Crimea. So the message being sent now, well, the recognition of borders actually doesn't apply. So for states that have nuclear capabilities or seek to acquire nuclear capabilities, the message is very strong, that guarantees will actually not apply in the future. So that's extremely troubling for international politics.
Well, yeah, and here we have a situation where we have one big country going into little countries. They went into Georgia, and realistically, the world did nothing. Now we have this situation. Realistically, other than, you know, sort of shaking our fists a little bit, we're doing nothing. It could be a situation where Russia gains, if not Ukraine, Crimea. We do nothing. Other countries, it would seem, like Poland, would be right to worry.
Poland is already worried. There's Poland, Lithuania. They've called, I think today, a meeting of NATO over this issue. But actually, you don't even have to go to recently, you know, new members of the EU, such as Poland and Lithuania. But think of Kazakhstan, which is a staunch ally of Russia and member of this, you know, Eurasian Union that Mr. Putin tried to almost impose on Ukraine. You have a lot of Russian speakers in northern Kazakhstan. I mean, if Russia now is making the claim that instability, chaos, whatnot, the security of our compatriots or Russian speakers is at stake, that we reserve the right to intervene, then the principle could be applied elsewhere. So there's actually close allies of Russia that are very nervous. As a matter of fact, China announced today that they are in favor of the respect of territorial integrity of Ukraine for understandable reasons.
All right. We have sort of posited that perhaps some of this is Putin using an age-old tactic to divert his people's attention from the fact that his economy is bad, that he's made some bad economic decisions. Does that make sense to you?
Well, obviously, I cannot. I'm not privy to Mr. Putin's mind, although
Right.
he, in the press conference today in particular, gave us a sample of what appears to be his motivations. I think we have to take him seriously. That when he says that Maidan is essentially a foreign conspiracy, he appears to believe that truly. When he says that the current government in power in Ukraine is not simply illegitimate, but consists of a bunch of fascists, anti-Semites, and extremists, he's kind of almost in his mind reliving World War II, when the Soviet Union had to fight a huge insurgency by Ukrainians, particularly in Western Ukraine. That's what, when Chancellor Merkel, that was alluded to in your previous segment of your show, said that Mr. Putin doesn't seem to be connected to reality and is in another world. Well, that appears to be the case, except he has, if not absolute, overwhelming power over the Russian system. There's no countervailing institutions to prevent him from acting on his vision of the world.
Well, and those two things, the power that he has and perhaps the disillusion, make him very, very dangerous. We appreciate you weighing in. Perhaps we'll talk again.
I hope so. Thanks a lot.